You know what I noticed after I finished this episode of Rakugo? It's like we are actually watching a Rakugo play. Let me explain. The first episode starts off. It introduces us to our main male character, introduces us to Yakumo or Bon, and we get to see more about how his character is in the future, how he is in present time. And he eventually says, like, okay, I will, have you as an apprentice, I will teach you, here's, like, the 3 rules, and then we go to the next episode and we have flashbacks. And then this episode also carries along the lines with more flashbacks. And it's like continuing the story where episode 2 left off, which is very confusing in some ways, because you're left wondering, why aren't we going back to present time? Like, why aren't we going back to, how the character was in the first episode? Which now I think I realize why. What we are seeing here, the story we are seeing, is actually Rakugo. If you understand what I'm getting at. For instance, what we are seeing told to us right now, like what's being told throughout these 2 episodes, is Bon or Yakumo telling the story to our main male character of the first episode, and allowing us to see the perspective of an engaging story. And if so, that's really unique style of storytelling, if that's exactly where this is going, because that's kind of what it gave me the impression of when I finished this episode, because of some of the narration that was used throughout this, entire episode of Rakugo. But now that I got that out of the way, let's talk about the main point of said episode. So, we are once again still back in the past and finding out more about our characters, like, Bon, and also finding out more about Shin, and seeing how these 2 used to be kind of like bros. Like, the bromance was strong between these 2 characters throughout this entire episode, and I couldn't help but smile. There was a very mature and realistic theme and atmosphere in this entire episode. When you see, for instance, Shin has to go with his teacher, and they gotta go and, to war pretty much, and be an entertainer for certain people that are soldiers, it really offered a realistic side to the series, and I really am actually happy to see something like that with the way this series portrayed that. It reminded me a lot of actually a certain film from Studio Ghibli with the way this was done, and it's kind of strange. I mean, I just did a recommendation video on When Marnie Was There, and now I'm getting more, like, familiar vibes of Studio Ghibli movies from this said series of Rakugo. So that's kind of crazy when you see stuff like that, but, I mean, still, when it came to this, there was a very mature side to it. We get to see the struggles and the hardships of what Bon has to go through, of wanting to be a Rakugo player. And I like how his characterization was shown. It really allows us to dive into him and see how much he has changed since, like, the last episode and even the first episode. It allows us to see the core differences and what makes him him, and later on down the road when he's an adult and he's very old. Because with this, when you see it to where he says in this episode, Shin, you're the one that made me first hate Rakugo, but then you're also the one that made me first love Rakugo. And I felt like that dialogue, the writing in that line was so fucking great. Probably the best line I think I've seen so far from this anime season. I love that line so much. You're the one that made me hate Rakugo, and now you're the one to make me love it. That GG. The fucking amazing line in this episode. Very heart-touching, gripping, and allows us to see more of the character and this connection between Shin and Bon, and how they are bros. So, the main focus, I like how it shifted from seeing the first half of the episode to where Bon, he felt like he was very inferior compared to Shin. Like, he could never become a Rakugo player. Like, he could never catch up to him because there was a gap that was always between these 2 people, and he could never catch up. He could never grab on and try to be in the same spot as Shin where he was in his studies. And eventually, you had it to where Shin and his teacher, they moved on. They had to go to war and entertain soldiers, and Bon was left behind because of his condition. With his leg condition, he couldn't really go off and travel a lot because he'd be a burden, he'd be a hindrance, but also it would endanger his life since he couldn't run if something bad happened. So, of course, Bon had to stay behind, and because of this, we get to see the inner psyche of what he's thinking and how he was so close to giving up on Rakugo, but then he learned to love it again as a coping mechanism. He used Rakugo as a coping mechanism to be able to move on, continue moving forward, even though he felt like he didn't love it, or he didn't want to do it. He felt like he was a failure at it. But then he realized that he was on common ground with Shin all along, because the way he held his own when they were gone. He was the breadwinner of the house for a while, until they finally returned back from the war. So I gotta give my props to Rakugo for being very mature, very realistic, and keeping it down to earth with a lot of the themes throughout this episode. So yes, once again, another stunning episode, definitely high up there in quality, just like the first 2 episodes, and damn it, man, this series, in its own way, in its own regard, I think this is probably equally tied with Bokudake. Like, I love Bokudake, but this is equally tied with it now. Like, I cannot even deny the quality that's put into this series. This right here is equal. I don't know what's going to come out on top before the end of this season, Winter of Anime 2016, but so far it's looking like a very tough race between Bokudake and Shouwa Rakugo. It's looking like a very, very tight race. How do you all feel about the maturity that this series has? And, you know, this is the 3rd episode, so I gotta ask the question. How many of you are going to continue watching said series? Are you going to drop it? Are you going to watch it? I mean, I'm curious, because, I mean, this series is obviously not going to be for everyone. So, let me know in the comments below, how many of you are going to drop or continue it? Of course, I'm going to be continuing it, because I am actually a very big fan of this series so far, and I'm loving learning more about Rakugo and these characters. These characters are very fascinating, and I'm loving to see how they, you know, interact with each other. But yeah, you all have a wonderful day or nights wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.